thank you. I'm going to press OK now, okay?
Okay, you're welcome. Casey, I got your email.
Mhm.
And I think, yes, you and Dr. Collingwood, this is your night.
Okay.
We are waiting for several more commissioners to join us this evening. Sorry for the delay. We will get the meeting started just as soon as we can. Thank you for your patience. Again, thank you for your patience. We are waiting to see if any more commissioners will join us this evening. just received a text from Commissioner Tolu, and he is logging in as we speak. He is having difficulties with that, so he will be with us shortly. Well, while Commissioner Tulu is trying to log in, I think that we will call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. This is West Contra Costa Unified School District's Independent Redistricting Commission meeting for Tuesday, December 14th, and we're going to call the meeting to order at 6:43. We are hoping that Commissioner Tulu will join us shortly. In the meantime, we can take items on the agenda that don't require a quorum. I will, in that case, I will call us to order. I will skip down to public comment. Is there at this time anybody who would like to make public comment? We do ask that you, under public comment, that you make comments under things that are not already on our agenda that do fall under our jurisdiction. So, Ms. Forrest, is there any public comment this evening?
No public comment at this time.
Hey, we'll cross item 5 off our list and we'll skip on to item 7. Are there any, oops. Let the record show that at 6:44, we do have Commissioner Tualu join us. So we now have a quorum. So I'm going to go back to item 2 on our agenda, our roll call. Ms. Forrest, will you take roll call for us, please?
Absolutely. Commissioner Butler. Present. Commissioner Diaz-Noriega. Absent. Commissioner Tolu. Let's see.
He's present. James, can you hear us?
Yes.
Great. Commissioner Hilliard.
Present.
Commissioner Gordon.
Present.
Commissioner Lazzaretti.
Sorry, present.
And that constitutes a quorum. So we'll move on to item 3, approval of the agenda. We did move a few things around, so I hope that we'll get approval for the agenda as amended by the chair. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended by the chair?
Sure, I move that we approve the agenda.
I have a motion from Commissioner Hilliard. Is there a second?
I second.
And a second from Commissioner Lazzaretti. Roll call vote, Ms. Forrest.
Commissioner Butler. Commissioner Diaz-Noriega. Commissioner Tolu.
Yes.
Commissioner Hilliard.
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Gordon.
Yes.
Commissioner Lazzaretti.
Yes.
As we already just covered public comment, we're going to move on to item 6 now, our discussion and possible action items. Item A is our discussion and possible adoption of preliminary plan for the trustee area that will be used in 2022 to 2030 for West Contra Costa Unified School District's trustee elections. At this time, I can turn it over to Mr. Pitts.
The one question I would have is, should we deal with item 4 first, the approval of the December 7th minutes?
Thank you. Moving back to item 4, approval of the December minutes. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the December 7th minutes.
I second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Lazzaretti and a second from Commissioner Tualu. Roll call vote, Ms. Forrest.
Commissioner Butler. Commissioner Diaz-Noriega. Commissioner Tolu.
Yes.
Commissioner Hilliard.
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Gordon.
Yes.
Commissioner Lazzaretti.
Yes.
And moving back to Mr. Pitts, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gordon. As everyone knows, we are here tonight. The primary item on the agenda tonight is the discussion and possible adoption by the commission of a preliminary plan for the trustee area map that will be used in the 2022 through 2030 West Contra Costa Unified School District trustee elections. I wanted to take a little time before providing space for discussion and questions from the commission members, as well as from the public on that topic, to provide a little background about where we've been, what we've done so far, and what information has been provided to the commissioners in connection with the decision that they're making tonight. So as everyone knows, the commission was constituted by Judge Henderson selecting volunteers. The commission retained both myself as legal counsel and Dr. Collingwood and Collingwood Research as the professional demographer to work with the commission. The commission has since that time held 5 public outreach meetings to gather information and input from the public regarding the redistricting process and the factors that should be taken into consideration by the commission as part of that. And in part, those meetings occurred both on Zoom and also with a physical location in each of the 5 different trustee areas under the current map for trustee elections in West Contra Costa Unified School District. Dr. Collingwood has been developing proposed maps that have been made available to the public and to the commission, both through his own website and for purposes of tonight have all been posted as well on the district's website, the Redistricting Commission's portions of the district's website. Those, for anyone who has not seen those or wants to find them again, I did put a link in the chat to both the commission's website and Dr. Collingwood's website where you can find that material. So as the commission members know, Dr. Collingwood has provided 4 different maps that the commission might consider adopting as a preliminary plan for redistricting. Again, with an understanding that this is not the final plan. This will be a preliminary plan that we will then have 3 more public input, public outreach meetings regarding the preliminary plan before the commission will adopt a recommended plan, which will then be considered for a short period of time and potentially with input from the meeting of the school board before the commission adopts its final districting plan. But tonight, the plan that we'll be adopting will be the sort of base that we will presume the commission will presumably use going forward in reaching its final decisions with respect to a recommended plan and a final plan. As the commission members are also aware, there were 3 updated maps that were provided this morning to commission members based on some minor revisions made to the maps that were distributed earlier by Dr. Collingwood. Those revisions affected only the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th maps. The first map remained the same because that map is the one that was basically the goal, as I understand it from Dr. Collingwood, was to remain as close as possible to the existing trustee area lines. The changes that were made to the other maps involved ensuring the trustee seat 3 does not cut across I-80 in any of the maps, keeping Contra Costa College together for all the maps and placing it either into trustee seat 2 or 4, moving part of North Richmond back into trustee seat 3 for both seats plans 3 and 4, and moving some blocks in lower southwest area of seat 3 into seat 2. In addition to being provided with those maps, the commission has been provided with additional information regarding the demographics. The commission and the public have been provided with additional information regarding the demographics of each trustee area, including the total population, the racial and ethnic breakdown of the population, the citizen voting age population and voter registration, the extent to which the population of a particular trustee area deviates from the average population of all of the population areas. The commission has been provided with a rough view of the population changes that might be expected in the future, although obviously based on relatively little information as far as it goes. Dr. Collingwood has provided the commission with measures of both compactness and contiguity to consider when it's adopting each map. Has also provided a breakdown of the degree to which the different maps involve splitting the trustee area, splitting attendance areas across trustee areas, which I know has been something that has been discussed at a few meetings. And it is something we can certainly discuss more tonight. As my understanding, and it's something you can ask for further detail from Dr. Collingwood on, is that it's not possible to avoid entirely splitting any attendance areas, that the other purposes that are set forth in the stipulated judgment governing the maps that need to be drawn here and that are also consistent with federal and state voting rights laws mean that drawing a map that keeps all attendance areas within one or another trustee areas is not going to be possible. But that is obviously the commission members could consider the extent to which that happens with particular maps as a factor in choosing a map. And also that is something that if, we could considering down the road if there are other minor changes that could be made to limit the impact of that. So the commission's job tonight is to choose one map to adopt as a preliminary plan guiding the work going forward. As I said already, this is not necessarily the final map, and it can be adjusted based on public input received in response to the preliminary plan or further consideration of potential maps. And the commission can certainly ask Dr. Collingwood to tweak these maps to see if some of the factors can be addressed further. Before turning it over to the commission for questions, discussion, I just wanted to remind the commissioners of the sort of set of priorities that have been set forth for the commission to consider in choosing a map. And these are the priorities that are set forth in the stipulated judgment that it kind of gives rise to the redistricting commission, and is the reason that we're here today. So as the commission members know, the first requirement is the requirement of the United States Constitution that there be reasonable equality of population within each trustee area. And Dr. Collingwood has provided the commissioners with the numbers to show that the maps all comport with the existing requirements with respect to equality of population, to the extent that they, the courts have not required perfect equality of population, but have just required it be roughly within 5% across the different districts, usually as a good guideline, and that Dr. Collingwood has taken the steps to ensure that that is the case, but has also let the commission members know exactly how far off of a perfect equality each of the different maps might be. The second factor that's set forth is compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act, first by establishing or maintaining trustee areas containing a majority of members of a protected class to the extent legally permissible, and then by considering any extent to which trustee areas containing a near majority of a protected class or a majority of protected classes that act in coalition would provide those protected classes with the opportunity to elect the candidates of their choice and to influence elections on a basis more equal to the opportunity enjoyed by the rest of the electorate. As the commission is aware, Dr. Collingwood has also attempted to draw maps that satisfy this condition. The trustee area 3 within the proposed maps is a trustee area that has a majority Latino citizen voting age population, and so should satisfy the first requirement set forth in this provision. Trustee area 2 is an area that is a near majority Black citizen voting age population. Going to the second factor discussed above, and trustee area 1 also has sizable minority populations that could act in coalition to elect a candidate of their choosing. So that is how the existing maps attempt to address that concern. The third requirement is the requirement of state law that population be as equal as possible using the validated California figures as well as the 2020 census numbers, and that is another matter that has been addressed by Dr. Collingwood. And finally, the judgment provides that after considering those factors, the commission can consider the factors set forth in the education code, including topography, geography, cohesiveness, contiguity, integrity, and compactness of territory, and respect for geographic identity of neighborhood and any communities of interest, including those of racial, ethnic, and language minorities, to the extent possible without violating the prior factors that we were talked about. And finally, I just remind the commission that the stipulated judgment provides that the commission shall not consider the place of residence of any incumbent or political candidate in defining trustee areas, and that the trustee areas shall not be drawn for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent candidate or political party. And I know that everyone here understands that, but I wanted to reiterate it for the purposes of tonight's discussion. And with that, I will turn it back to the commission.
Questions and comments from commissioners who would like to start this evening? Craig, you look
I'll
like,
go ahead and start.
okay.
Okay, well, first, I wish we had more commissioners here to make this decision tonight. It's a very important step, so, but we'll do what we can with what we have. So just a broad overview or observation for me in looking over the maps and the data statistics from Dr. Collingwood. It seems pretty clear with all the maps we're looking at that trustee areas 1, 3, and 5 will be pretty straightforward in that 1 will have a significant Asian population, Asian American population. 3 will have a majority majority Hispanic population. 5 will be a majority white population. For me, the more interesting, the really interesting questions and choices for us are really come down to trustee areas 2 and 4, and that's where we see some really significant changes among these maps. I'll be curious to hear how Dr. Collingwood and other commissioners see these issues. It seems to me that if we're looking at maps 1 and 2, provides in terms of the Black population in District 2, trustee area 2. Maps 1 and 2 have less Black representation than 3 and 4. And it seems like the Black population is more evenly dispersed between districts 2 and 4 in the first 2 maps, whereas 3 and 4 endeavor to give Black population a stronger representation in district. There's no way it looks like to provide a majority Black trustee area, but and some of the contrast I saw was most notable. I know the maps have changed a little bit today, so I tried to update my numbers, but the contrast was really most notable when I was looking at specifically more so at the registered voter data, whereas in the first 2 maps in District 2, trustee area 2, the Hispanic population has a higher representation among registered voters, if I'm reading the data correctly, than the Black population. Whereas in 3 and 4, the Black population has a larger representation among registered voters. It looks like to me that the trade-off is the Black, if we provide more Black representation in trustee area 2, it dilutes Black representation in trustee area for kind of considerably. And makes that area, that trustee area, less compact than would be the case with the first two maps. So that's kind of, to me, that's kind of a central question for us to wrestle with to this evening, in terms of which direction philosophically we want to go. Because I think the first two maps have one very firm philosophical direction in terms of the Black population and representation, and 3 and 4 have a very different philosophical approach. So that's my major observation after looking through the various proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lazzaretti. Other comments from other commissioners? Commissioner Hilliard.
Yes, sure. Thanks to Dr. Collingwood for preparing such good maps. And I echo some of Commissioner Lazzaretti's concerns about the distribution of voting age population in trustee areas 2 and 3. The map that I like the most is map 2. And I think that's because it has a good racial balance in each trustee area, which will assure a minority voice in the selection of school trustee candidates, particularly in areas 2 and 3. Growing up in this area, I like map 2 because it keeps historic neighborhoods and communities intact, such as having North Richmond, South Richmond, and San Pablo, each in a distinct trustee area, like how trustee area 2 includes North Richmond, some areas of South Richmond, kind of like the Kennedy area, and parts of eastern parts of Richmond. I like that it gives voting power to majority minority divisions, such as trustee area 1, as Commissioner Lazzaretti aptly stated, is a strong Asian area. Trustee area 2, strong Black population, and trustee area 3, strong Hispanic population. I also like how trustee area 4, with the racial breakup as proposed, I think it would be a competitive district for all communities, and that the racial balance there means that a candidate with a good ground game from any community or would be able to sway voters with their platform, and it would seem like it would be a good competitive trustee area where the best candidate would really have to stand out. And one thing I noted about map number 2 is that the population deviation weighs in favor of a larger population in trustee area 5, I believe. I want to say it's 2.72% above the mean. So I guess that just means trustee area 5 has a few more people than if we divided the 5 trustee areas equally. But that doesn't seem significant, because I seem to remember Dr. Collingwood talking about the fastest population growth is occurring within Asian and Hispanic communities. And I think the proposed map 2 does a good job of creating these strong majority minority trustee areas where the population growth, if it continues as expected over the next 10 years, would allow each of those respective trustee areas to still have a good majority minority division. I think trustee area 2 would be a good African American community voice. Trustee area 3, strong Hispanic population. Trustee area 4, again, it's going to be competitive. Next, I liked map number 1, just because if it doesn't have as many changes. I think it has more compactness. Some of my criticisms of map 4 and map 3 are that I think trustee area 4 in both of those maps is a little too large, and it reaches across traditional communities of interest. I'm sure we'll discuss more of this later, but I think it's important that whatever proposed map we go with reflects some of the historical community connections which are in place. Such as there's strong connection between North Richmond, South Richmond, San Pablo, however you want to divide it there. El Sobrani is a pretty strong, in some ways, insular community that may not necessarily have much in common with East Richmond, in my experience. Same thing, same considerations should be taken with areas like Rolling Wood, Hilltop, just to make sure that the members of those neighborhoods have the ability to link up with other communities that will allow them to push for candidates that can speak to their interests. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Hilliard. Commissioner Tuilu, do you have comments or questions? Questions also, we feel free to, if you have any questions for Dr. Collingwood, feel free to express them.
Yeah, probably some of my questions, probably Dr. Collingwood can answer. So first, I just want to share my recollection from the election last year. I remember Area 2, right now the incumbent is African American, the trustee, but I do remember there is also a candidate Latina. So, yeah, I think Area 2 we can either screen to African American or Latino. And I think Dr. Collingwood already give comment on that part. And Area 4, if I remember, there are 2 Latino candidates, and the winner is Latino. Area 3, although the majority of the population Latino, but actually there is only one candidate at the time, the incumbent, Mr. Phillips. And I'm not sure whether he's Latino, but I never heard him speaking in Spanish in public, so probably he's not Latino. And then Area 1, actually there is candidate, she's API, but the winner is trustee who is African American. And then Area 5, majority white, the population, and the winner is white. So that's my share. And then if we will adopt map 1, I just checked, then the concern of Ms. Harrison will not be addressed because the area boundary will be on the road across the middle school. So Ms. Harrison will be voted for the trustee that doesn't belong to the middle school where her child goes to. So that's my concern, because in my opinion, we really need to hear her concern, because otherwise, if we will have a hearing in the future, then maybe nobody will come to voice their concern if we don't really listen their concern. So that's my comment for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Collingwood, you look like you wanted to add something in, or no?
I was sort of just nodding along with the comments politely, but also, in general agreement with all these important points that everyone's making. I think I was thinking that, I think Commissioner Tulu made a point that Plan 2 addressed that concern. The attendant from a few weeks ago. I think it was.
I
We could
think,
go back and check the notes on that. It was either 2 or 3, I think, that addressed that.
yeah,
Remember.
one-
But that was all that just came up.
Thank you. Well, I agree.
think I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for some reason, my computer, I tried to unmute and it's just slow responding. If I remember correctly, Plan 3, but maybe Plan 2 also. But for sure, I just checked Plan 1 tonight, and Plan 1 will divide the road. The road is the boundary. So the middle school, we belong to Area 3, and the residents of Miss Harrison will be Area 4, I believe.
Excuse me,
Okay,
Commissioner
good.
Tualu, on what street does the attendee live on? Because I didn't read.
Abela.
Vale Road?
Yeah, Abela Circle. So basically just across the street, because it's gated community, and the entrance actually will be from Road 20. So if we will adopt Plan 1, it's okay, as long as we can tweak so the residents, the Abela Circle will be the same part with the middle school. Then I'm fine with that.
That should be, we're kind of moving into we kind of settle on a framework based on these various philosophical perspectives that Dr. Lanzaretti Commissioner Lanzaretti.
I wish.
Yeah, maybe not. Grad school running regressions in the basement for 6 years wasn't.
If I
that
could go
great.
back in time, I would do it all differently.
And Commissioner Hilliard were raising, we kind of set my suggestion, and I'm trying to not influence you all in any sort of way in your really important decision. But I would say that we set up a framework, and then proceeding forward, these issues that Commissioner Tulu raises and other things that are relatively easy to kind of adjust to, to public kind of comments that we're trying to, do a good faith effort to make those responses is totally workable. And I think my general advice right now is we kind of using our philosophical understanding, make sure we, follow the rules. Let's set up this, the steps that we are going to continue to proceed with, and then we can drill down on that a little bit more precisely as we go. So I just wanted to say that. Sorry for long-winded academic response again.
Thank you. I actually can bring an interesting perspective, one as a teacher and one as a longtime K-12 school board member. And whenever we are drawing lines for attendance areas, it's difficult. At some point in time, some point in space, one boundary line ends and another one begins. So you always have that point. You always have those students who are best friends when they're in their neighborhood, but one student is going to this school and one student is going to that school. It's something that we were unable to correct. And it's just a matter of, as you looked at the school attendance, it mattered what the school could, how many students could attend there. It mattered, how large the classrooms were. All of these things had played into the decisions made. And then every every September, we crossed our fingers. And students would show up, and sometimes we would get the number we hoped for, and sometimes we'd get less, and sometimes we'd get a whole lot more. So it was always a guessing game for us, and always a moving target. So I just want to bring that perspective to the commissioners this evening as we try and do our best. I think one of the things that's so appealing for me for map 1 and 2, except for as what you pointed out, is that they are the compactness and the fact that they are similar to the maps that have been drawn. And my understanding is that the maps that are now in place were actually results of the lawsuit, where the two parties came together and decided that these were the lawsuits. So there's some kind of historical precedence for these, and so we're trying to, as best we can, improve upon them with the Constitution in mind, with the Federal Voting Rights Act, with MAPS Act, with the state laws, and with Ed Code. So for me, it's made, I think I agree with you, Commissioner Hilliard, it has made me lean toward map 2 as one of my my favorites at this time, but my mind is open. If there's an argument or facts that I'm not aware of, I'm happy to look at that and to make decisions as a commission. So are there further questions or comments from commissioners this evening? Commissioner Lazzaretti.
Yes, a couple of follow-up questions, Dr. Collingwood. To the issue of attendance boundary areas, I know we discussed earlier, it was stated that there's no way to approve a map that is going to keep all the attendance areas in each trustee area and individual trustee areas. It's impossible. So no matter what map we adopt, there's going to be some issues similar to the public comment we heard a couple weeks ago. But is there any of these maps, what do you have a sense from which of these maps puts the most number of attendance areas in the respective trustee areas, or eliminates the issue that's the concern that's been coming up, you know, in our discussions?
They all look similar. Let me pull up, let's just take proposed map 2, for example. Let's look at the current splits. So with the, with high schools, it's not as much of a note, but for example, if you pull up proposed map 2, this is not the one I sent this morning, but the kind of initial one, they're very similar. It's not too much different. We have a elementary and high school PDF off to the right. So for example, if you pull up the high school one, you'll see starting on page, I think it's 2 of 4, it talks about high school zones. And so you can kind of see the general composition of the different districts that have some of the different high schools, for example. So for example, Hercules is 100% in District 1, with basically, even though it says part of it is also in District 4, it shows 0 population there. So that's probably some oddity of geography. And so that's kind of what, you would go about looking at that. My sort of examination of all of these is that we're pretty much having breaking across, especially on the elementary school. That's going to be a much more noticeable. But in general, the high schools are tending to be disproportionately in one versus another. And so, there's reason to like that. For example, if you look at District 5 and Plan 2, most of that district's comprised of people who go to El Cerrito. that are in the El Cerrito attendance zone. So I like that in that case, but I would have to give it a little bit more of a kind of in-depth examination, and because this is like a kind of a tertiary type concern here. And for me, this is more of the kind of thing that we are going to play a game of whack-a-mole trying to get this right in all 4 districts. And for me, what's more important is getting the other side right, then shifting to this within the map and the philosophy. So I haven't spent as much cognitive brain sources going and doing that.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that no particular map provided a clear advantage in terms of, reducing that, addressing or mitigating that concern. It doesn't sound like at this point it
That's
does.
correct.
What are your, can you kind of, I assume when you created maps 3 and 4 as a contrast to the first 2 maps, the idea there was to bolster the Black representation in District 2. Can you talk a little bit about what your thought process was there, and to what degree do you think the Black voting population's influence or impact would be affected one way or another by sticking with the current distributions, map 1 and 2, versus it seems like maps 3 and 4 were doing something a little more radical to try to bolster the Black population in District 2. And so can you walk us through what your thought processes were there, and what are the pros and cons to going that route? Sure.
Yeah. What I do when especially with, and obviously racially and ethnically or ethno-racially diverse population like West Contra Unified School District is, I'll take the maps and I'll shade them by block. So I'll start in this case, given the background of this lawsuit, and the reason why we're all here is I first begun with an examination of the Hispanic citizen voting age population at the block level visually. It became clear right away, of course, that like as you've seen in those interactive plots where I plotted those out by block group or by block, that District 3 was going to be fairly, I was easily able to draw a majority minority seat there. And so then the next step, noticing I shift now to looking at the African-American Black population, citizen voting age population with a similar shading scheme. And so I noticed, of course, based on the demographics of those different blocks, that there's an area north of Contra Costa College, that kind of area north of San Pablo that also has a sizable Black population. And so I wanted to see if I could potentially draw a majority minority Black seat, basically, as we go about developing, to make sure that, if we're in violation of that, and we could draw one and we didn't, and it was, fitting the various criteria as laid out by Casey, that could potentially put us and you, all of us, into a situation that later on we didn't want to kind of be in. And so I felt it was a responsible thing to at least provide an opportunity for the commission to look at a seat that was probably on the higher end of the Black citizen voting age population district, in case commissioners wanted to go that route, based on travel contiguity and based on other compactness criteria. That seat in that district is totally passable. But still, you're talking maybe a gap of 4 points. So you're looking at a 40% versus 44% citizen voting age Black population in that particular area, with still a decent Black population in other districts as well. And so I think Commissioner Hilliard raised a really centrally important point here, is concerning the balance of racial populations across different districts. And that's one reason I'm shifting a little bit here, but I really like District 4 because it does provide that kind of natural competitiveness, and it can produce some really important, potentially engaged campaigns. And I think that's what, as a political scientist, you want to see competitive elections. That's one of the most, because then candidates and elected officials are more responsive to the public. That's I think something to consider. But going back to District 2, I would imagine, given the kind of historical activation of the Black community in voting in this region, that it's likely that if they turn out, that population turns out in that district, regardless of how you put it together in districts, say 1 and 2 versus 3 and 4, controlling for like voter turnout and that kind of thing, they'll probably be able to elect a candidate of choice, which is to say they're strong Black opportunity districts, both of them. And so to me, they both kind of pass that test, but it's hard to know, for sure. And, without having more data and doing, futuristic analyses and things like that. So, in a lot of ways, I wanted to test that out. I wanted to see what the possibilities were regarding that demographic. And then I wanted to provide that as a possible option.
Thank you. I
Just
think,
finally, the biggest dichotomy I noticed was in the registered voter numbers between the Black and Hispanic populations, between maps 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So for instance, I think if I'm looking at the numbers correctly, map 2 has Black registered voters in District 2 at 32.6 versus 38.1 for Hispanics. But map 4 sort of flips it and has 41.8% Black registered voters versus 32.85. That seems like a pretty stark contrast. The big picture, do you see those numbers really impacting races in a significant way? I mean, in terms of
Yeah, let me provide
we're talking more about voting age population, I know, but there's so many different numbers we could focus in on. So do you see that changing the dynamics of elections in any significant way?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, for sure. And I think that should be considered. The caveat to the registration numbers, particularly for Black registration numbers relative to Hispanic, the methodology that I use to develop those is, I'll just give you another quick short snapshot. We take the census block, and then we basically merge that with someone's surname at an individual voter file level. So I have all the voters who are registered as voters in Contra Costa County in 2020, say general election or so, right around there. We get that voter file, and then I subset that to just the district here that we're talking about, that the outer district boundaries of West Contra Costa Unified School District. And then I conduct this individual level surname mixed with geography analysis that produces a probability for 5 different race categories for each individual. And then I sum that to the block or sum that to the full jurisdiction, and kind of use that as an estimation. In my experience, given Black surnames relative to white surnames, there's some similarity. Johnson, Williams, these types of names, that both communities have people in them that share those names. Whereas you do have this situation for Spanish surnames, obviously with Filipinos and Latinos, but to the extent that those two groups are, say, not living necessarily next to each other in a particular area that you're looking at, the kind of estimation is pretty accurate. So and the same thing for the AAPI population. So in general, you're going to get a little bit more accurate of a read for those two groups, AAPI and Hispanic, than you are for African American. So the Black numbers could be somewhat depressed in the voter registration numbers. And we've talked about this a few times, but I'm throwing a lot of numbers and data at y'all, and so I just want to remind you. And so for me, when I'm looking at that, having that registration number is important, but I'm also still really focused on the CVAP numbers in those cases. So this is the kind of, you're hitting the nail on the head, as it were, the kind of key tension on this issue and which way to go. And I mean, I think they're both good decisions. I don't think you can go wrong either way. So yeah, that's what I can tell you on that.
Well, and
Great,
that
thank
speaks to- Yeah, and that speaks to a job well done. So with the map. So thank you, Dr. Collingwood. Any more questions, comments from commissioners before I open it up to the public? Seeing none, I will open it for public comment. Ms. Forrest, is there any public comment at this time?
No public comment at this time.
Interesting. It's a first for me, I think. Have such a interesting topic that will affect so many people, not to have at least one public comment on it. Then I will bring it back to the commissioners and ask if there are further comments on this. Further questions? Now I'm going to ask the hard question of which way your Commissioner Hilliard.
One question for Dr. Collingwood. So tonight, after the commission selects the map that we want to move forward with, we can still make minute adjustments to that map based on public comment and commissioner input, correct?
We'll
Oh,
have
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
We'll have
Alright,
3
thank you.
additional meetings with the preliminary map to get input and an opportunity to then adjust at that time.
I mean, I don't, to be honest, I think you could do, my view is that the commission could do minor or major changes. I think this is a goal and this is a starting point, but there is nothing, it doesn't bind the commission's next choices.
Right, it's kind of like we're picking the blueprint and then we can move the walls and elevations as we see fit, right?
And you could decide you wanted a ranch house rather than a multi-story.
Not-
As long
Not
as
in
the
this
square
area.
footage is the same, yes. No, square footage is not is immobile. But and then I wanted to say one other comment at this time with the input from the one person that we had, that she was not unable to vote for the person that represented the school that her child went to. The supervisors also looked at splitting up areas. And when they took an area, they actually had people in, say, Walnut Creek, who said, we want our area split up because now I have 2 supervisors that I can go to. So I think one of the things we can tell people who find themselves split is that you're not really split. Now you have 2 people that represent you that you can go to and have your opinions voiced and heard. So I think that is something that was very pointed out, and a
Great.
positive actually for many people, they felt. Again, and how we're going to proceed, and we're going to now put you on the uncomfortable position of talking about your preferences and which way you're leaning towards and which map. And who would like to start off this discussion?
I'll start.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Tualu, I'll let you go after Commissioner Hilliard.
Sure, as I stated earlier, the map that I think captures the goals of this commission by creating majority minority districts. It seems to do the best job of that, and also seems to have the most geographically compact areas where communities of interest are connected and within a trustee area without having abnormal shapes, in a sense, in order to make a district. I think it creates the most competitive voting areas. I think it does a good job of protecting the Asian community interests in trustee area 1, the Black community interests in trustee area 2, even though, as Commissioner Lazzaretti accurately pointed out, the Hispanic population is quite large in trustee area 2, but I think the Black voting bloc would do well to promote and support its candidates in trustee area 2. I think trustee area 3 is a very strong Hispanic Latino trustee area. 4, I think, as Dr. Collingwood stated, it is has a lot of, it's very diverse, and I think it's going to be a competitive district for whichever candidate is the most effective at getting their message out, knocking on doors, having that ground game. I think that's what we want to see in elections. We don't just want the person who's best funded to come in and steal elections without connecting to the people. And I think, moving forward, if this is the map we adopt, trustee area 4 could be a very influential swing seat. I think trustee area 5, it's a majority white community, and I think the population is weighted heavier there based on the median, the mean deviation from the mean. I want to say it's like 2.78 or something. It's on the maps. But given the expected population growth in the other trustee areas, I think in a couple of years that population deviation will be reduced to where the trustee areas will be more evened out. I just think I like the map number 2. I'm open though. They're all good maps, but 2 is my preference. Thank you.
Commissioner Toulouse?
Yes, so I can go with map 1 because especially map 1 is very, very similar to the election last year. So people don't get surprised when they go to the booth this year to elect some, because I think some candidates, they will be on the ballot. As long as, and I think we already discussed that we can tweak the proposed map 1, like maybe incorporate the concern of Ms. Harrison, because I believe she's the only one that voiced concern about it. And map 2, I also just checked. Map 2 also still split Helms Middle School and the residents of Ms. Harrison. So if we don't tweak map 2, then we don't address the concern of Ms. Harrison either. But map 3 definitely address the concern. But as we already discussed tonight, map 3 kind of changed a lot, and maybe some voters will kind of surprise why in 2020 we elect, for example, area 2, but now we vote for area 3 or something like that. So I can go either one, which other commissioners want to go, as long as we tweak the map, whichever we end up to accommodate the concern of Ms. Harrison. Thank you.
Commissioner Lazzaretti?
Everyone makes very good points. Dr. Collingwood, one follow-up question, since there's been some discussion now between maps 1 and 2. It seems like to me the major distinction between maps 1 and 2 is that it strengthens the Hispanic population in trustee area 3 somewhat. Is that accurate? Is that the main distinction?
Yeah, hold on, let me, I'm just trying to remember. I got a bunch of maps pulled up. That is the primary distinction there. with
And
map
given,
two.
given anticipated growth in the Hispanic population, do you see that as a significant factor going up by, I guess it's about 3 or 4% in the majority Hispanic trustee area? It seems like that's going to continue probably to grow over the next several years anyway. But is that significant in your mind?
That's $1 million question. I would say it is. That's why I did it. A lot of times when I'm drawing like a seat that we can actually get over 50, we want to, and this is a rule of thumb. And again, I'm not trying to necessarily sway you, because from a liability perspective, at least both are going to be adequate. But from a performance perspective, in terms of electoral performance, if you have a strong Latino candidate, there's racially polarized voting in that particular election, then that number could make the difference for sure. 55% is often the kind of numbers, if we have the possible, it's a performance number that we kind of try to angle on. And one reason I wasn't able to do that, of course, with the Black population is just because those numbers don't exist. So I do think that's something that is significant, and it's more significant now than say in a couple cycles, because like you pointed out, the Latino population is likely growing, even though the projections on that point were maybe not as clear, but it seems reasonable to make that kind of base assessment. And so you might get a situation in 2026 where you're like, what decade is it? But besides that, I'm that old, but besides that, you would get a 56% Latino CBAP seat then potentially, but you might be running into, and I'd have to check the electoral rules here, but you would be potentially running into some incumbency issues where you have an incumbent advantage. And so Latino voters are still potentially unable to elect a candidate of choice, or maybe they don't vote as much because they assume this other person's in there, or that, and that's the kind of, to me, that's the kind of rub that you're playing with in that particular context. But again, that's just my kind of academic-y demography take. This is obviously your all decision. I think you're good either way you go.
I agree. Yeah, everything you say makes perfect sense, and I agree. I agree with your opinion on that in terms of the Hispanic population and representation, and for that reason, I support map 2 over map 1. For me, it comes down to map 2 and map 4. One thing I will point out, just for consideration for the other commissioners, is that I notice in terms of the deviation is greatest in favor of trustee area 5 in maps 1 and 2, where you have a 2.72% deviation. And that is also by far the biggest majority white trustee area. And this is also the El Cerrito area, which is predominantly been heavily represented on the school board when it was elected through an at-large, a large format. The political power in El Cerrito, in that area, trustee area 5, has always been very significant. And I think one big advantage of going to trustee area elections is to address that issue and really make the board more representative. But I will point out that having that percentage deviation in a heavily white area that's been politically powerful traditionally, I think that's a concern. Whereas if we go down to maps 3 or 4, we're getting it, they have a negative, that trustee area has a negative deviation, which I think in all things, I know we're looking at trade-offs here, right? But all things being equal, I think it would be better to have a neutral or negative deviation in that trustee area than a very positive one. That's the only caveat I'll throw out there. I'll defer to trustee Hilliard, who knows the area better than I do and the communities of interest better than I do, the geography issues. And I'm fine. If the preference of the other commissioners is 2, I'm fine going along with that, but I just wanted to throw that issue out there on the deviation.
Thanks, Commissioner Lazaretti. That's really quickly in response to the things you pointed out. Could Dr. Collingwood help us understand with this current population deviation on map 2 and with the population growth that we're currently seeing in Asian communities and Hispanic communities, is it a fair assumption that the population growth in those higher Asian, higher Latino areas would catch up with that 2% deviation, or is that beyond our knowledge?
No, that's, I think that's a pretty strong assumption you can make. I feel pretty comfortable advising you that your intuition on that point is correct. I see that almost everywhere in the United States. There's lots of, sorry, I was just looking at what Casey pointed out here. Yeah, no, that was the second point I was going to say, which is there's actually that District 5 is larger. And so in a 1 person, 1 vote, they have more people with also the same equal vote as, say, a district that's a little bit smaller. They also only get 1 vote on the school board. And so it's sort of like, I live in New Mexico, you live in California. We have both 2 senators kind of thing. It's obviously not that extensive. And so it's actually the inverse in terms of a representation standpoint. And so I think that given that it's given the historical, kind of power in that area, it's a little bit less concerning. But I do think that the point of trying to get as close to as possible the deviation is always a major goal. It's the first thing that I start with, but I see that 2.71 and it does, and given Commissioner Hilliard's point, it doesn't concern me. And if it did, I would, I would say that. I would say, yes, we should try to bring it down. And again, once we do adopt a map, we can start to work at the edges in the little spots to try to balance it out a little bit. It's really, we're setting the guideposts.
Thanks, Dr. Collingwood.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Collingwood. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Tualu?
Yeah, so I can go with either. Interesting also observation from Commissioner Lazaretti about the deviation in Area 5. Yeah, so if we want to maintain the strong majority of white in Area 5, then I'm fine with that. But I remember also the election, actually the winner was decided, both of them white, 1 female, 1 male. And both of them, I think, just separated by less than 500 votes. So very, very close election for Area 5. Yeah, so yeah, as I said earlier, I can go with either plan, as long as after we adopt, if the concern of Ms. Harrison is not addressed, then we will tweak the map so we address the concern of Ms. Harrison. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lazaretti, any last comments?
No, that's about it for me. I will say, based on the commissioner comments and Dr. Collingwood's comments, I favor map 2.
Thank you. Commissioner Hilliard, anything else you would like to add at this time?
No other comments.
So it sounds like we've reached a consensus on map 2. And now what we need to do is we need to make sure that the motion to adopt a particular map 2, is also that we include that we are adopting the draft report regarding the preliminary plan map 2. So is there a motion on from commissioners?
Sorry, Vicky, could you restate the language that we have to make this motion with?
I am happy to. So we should try and make sure that the motion is to adopt map 2 as well as the draft report regarding the preliminary plan. So we will be adopting both. And we will also, with the understanding that we will be continuing on with 3 more meetings, and that this is not the final project. We can tweak the map accordingly, especially as we have had a request by one public comment. Is there a motion?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt preliminary map number 2, as well as the draft report regarding the preliminary plan, with an understanding that this commission will continue to move forward and engage the public at 3 more meetings in order to get community input in regards to the final map.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
I have a motion from Commissioner Hilliard with a second from Commissioner Lazzaretti. Roll call vote, Ms. Forrest.
Commissioner Butler, Commissioner Diaz-Noriega, Commissioner Tuolu,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilliard,
Yes.
Commission Chair Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazzaretti.
Yes.
Excellent. We can now move on to our next item. Our next item is reports. Are there any commissioner reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 8, future meetings. So our next future meeting is in January. And we have that set on our
What's the date?
webpage. We have it set on our webpage. Do we have the date? Mr. Pitts, I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, if you could give me one moment.
I know, I was going to try and look at it very quickly.
So the next, I think actually the commission should consider when we want to hold the next meetings. The next scheduled meeting for business is on January 25th to adopt a recommended plan. But between that time and between now and January 25th, we do need to hold 3 public hearings on the preliminary plan. So
We need to hold one early on so that we can also adopt a resolution to continue teleconferencing. And so we're looking at January, let's see here.
So if the commission were to meet on January 4th, I think that would be within the time frame to adopt the continuing resolution with respect to meeting by Zoom. But then that would require, if we wanted to continue to meet on Tuesdays, we would then want to do the public outreach meetings, presumably on the 4th, the 11th, and the 18th.
Interestingly, I just checked my schedule and I have the meeting down on the 4th.
Okay.
Is there anyone with a conflict? I have to, again, compliment the commissioners this evening. It's a completely volunteer job. You take time away from your family, from your real job to be here to do a very important job. And I want to thank everybody again for their consistent dedication and professionalism and attention to detail and really doing the job well done. So thank you. But without any one of you here this evening, the meeting will be difficult to hold on the 4th. So is there anybody who might have a conflict with January 4th?
The school goes back on the 3rd, so I guess Commissioner Hiller and I are in the same boat. Our children go back on the 3rd, so.
Excellent. So then I guess we will set our next meeting for January 4th at 6:30 p.m. We will be getting the agenda out. Because it is a holiday schedule and it's a Tuesday, we're going to really have to figure out how we get the agenda posted. But I think we could do that well ahead of time. I don't think there'll be anything that we're not prepared to do before they go on vacation. Do you agree, Mr. Pitts?
Yes, I'll work on a draft agenda tomorrow. So
Okay.
that we can try to get that up this week.
Awesome. And if there is no further business of the commission this evening, seeing none, then I can congratulate you all and say meeting is adjourned at 7:58 p.m. Well done, everyone. Thank you for
Great
attending.
job, everyone.
Good to see
You,
you.
happy holidays, everyone.
You too.
Happy
See you
holidays.
Next year.
Happy
And
holidays.
thank you again. You guys are so awesome.
Thank you.
We should have
Vicky.
wore Santa
Thank you for
hats
your
for this
leadership.
one, but next time. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.